Biden. Do you not feel as if the finance minister misspoke?
Well, first of all, good evening to your cherished listeners. And I think just as you have eloquently proposed, what he is seeking to do is to set the narrative right. So, the announcement made a couple of years ago by the then finance minister, the Honorable Ken Oforiatta, introduced new taxes for betting and lottery. However, in the christening of the name by the European people, they made the betting tax. But just as you have also explained, was read from my narrative, the betting is regulated by the Gaming Commission under the Ministry of Interior. And then the lottery is regulated by the National Lottery Authority under the Ministry of Finance. So, if our argument at that time was that you can conveniently tax, you can, if you want to, conveniently tax betting. But it shouldn't even be the end user or the player. It should be the company. But if you are taxing even the betting companies, the betting companies, they are not enjoined under any act to do good causes. That is charity. It is at their own discretion. If it comes to lottery, the National Lottery Authority is mandated by the Act 722 to, as part of its operations, conduct a lottery, raise revenue, pay themselves, pay into the consolidated fund, and also embark on what the Act calls the good causes. The good causes is simply for them, or for us in the spirit of the Act, for you to take care of the poor, the vulnerable, the physically and the mentally afflicted. And then again, any other consideration as deemed the Minister of Finance and the board of the NLA. So we made this argument with letters back and forth. Then eventually, Honorable Mohammed Amin Adam then convened us that the GRA meets up with the NLA and also, in fact, assigned one of his deputy ministers to engage us on the way forward. So it was never implemented at all. So if you are abolishing it today, you cannot even pinpoint that maybe the tax on the 10% of lottery even raise even 1 Ghana cedis or 10 Ghana because it was never implemented. And there are several correspondences between the NLA and GRA, the NLA and the Ministry of Finance. So I thought it was important to set the narrative right. Rather curiously, the Honorable Finance Minister, Dr. Forsen, today also did not mention that the tax on the 10%, in fact, the winnings on betting, has been abolished. He didn't say that. What he said was that the 10% taxes on lottery winnings, which is popularly referred to as betting tax, will be abolished or has been abolished. I hope you are getting the narrative.
Please go on. I'll come back to you.
Yes, that's fine.
No, I'm saying that you go on. When you land, I'll come back to you. I'm following closely.
In his own words and the narrative, if you want me to also read for you without mentioning a word, I can also do that for you in a second. So basically, in his own explanation and in the reading as well, what he did or what he said, yes. So what he said was that that's page 141. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 10% withholding tax on winnings from lottery, otherwise known as the betting tax. We will abolish the 10% withholding tax on winnings from lottery, otherwise known as the betting tax. So you must come again to also let us understand whether this is narrative extends to the gaming and betting industry. Because as for the lottery sector, it was never collected, it was never enforced. Because we NLA raise issues that one, it will be unfair since two, it will cripple the lottery sector, and also three, we also felt it will not government can't raise the needed revenue. And I tell you what, the NLA is owned by government, so it will be government taxing itself. The NLA's operations, about 45% is in the hands of illegals. So those who are playing with the government side, if you impose 10% on their wins, they'll end up now moving in a sweeping manner towards the illegals that we don't know, they don't pay taxes, and they will have a day. So this was a sound argument that we raised with the Honorable Mohammed Amin Adam, and he saw reason in it, and then in a letter directed the JRA to convene a meeting for us to discuss. And all these letters are there. All these letters are there.
I see. That's a very elaborate explanation you give, but the conclusion is that the lottery winnings, the tax on it, was never implemented, right?
At all. It wasn't.
Ghanaians are also aware. I'm coming. Let me make my point here.
Please, sorry.
And Ghanaians are also aware that winnings on lottery were never taxed. What we know,
players of the game will be aware that it was never implemented. If you say Ghanaians as a whole, if the person is not, doesn't play, you won't know.
So we are saying that winnings on lottery taxation never happened. However, you also admit that the explanation given to the 10% charged on sport betting is also known as betting tax, right?
Exactly.
So if the finance minister says that we are abolishing 10% on lottery winnings, which you say players in the game know that was never implemented, and uses the expression otherwise known as betting tax, what really is the point, or what's the cause of concern?
So what happens to those in the gaming and betting sector?
Because it was never implemented, so nothing like that exists.
No. It's a lottery that was never implemented.
Exactly.
The gaming and betting sector, it was implemented, and that is where a chunk of the outcry is coming from.
Exactly, and your issue has to do with lottery winnings.
Exactly.
Which I'm saying that we all know that it was never implemented. So I'm just
he's saying he's going to abolish it.
And I'm saying that is it not a point of perhaps the finance minister misspoke? Instead of saying sports betting, he said lottery winnings, which do not exist in the first place. And so how do you abolish? No, I just want to get to understanding. So the question will be, how do you then abolish something that's never existed?
So fantastic. That has been my point. That was never enforced, never collected. Yes, you are right. It's in our books, but it was never enforced because of the issues that we raised. So what I'm saying is that if the finance minister can go a step further and say that also with clarity, the tax, the 10% withholding tax on that of all betting that pertains in the gaming and betting sector too has been abolished, that is when then you can be making headway.
I see. So for you, when the former finance minister, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, also addressed the press post-budget presentation and said that the government never introduced bet winnings taxation, the explanation he sought to give was that the previous government never taxed lottery winnings. Is that what you are saying?
Honorable Amin Adam wasn't wrong because the finance minister in his presentation today to that of the lottery winnings is withholding tax as betting tax. So he is saying that that thing that you refer to as the betting tax was never collected. It's not there.
But is it also wrong to assume that the finance minister was referring to sport betting?
So that is the clarity he must bring. It's not up to you and I to speak on his behalf. He must bring that clarity himself.
And you want him to do that in Parliament?
Well, he's a colleague in Parliament, and we'll be debating this budget as well from next week. So definitely.
I see. I think your point is well made, and that's Sammi Awuku, former Director General of the National Lottery Authority. This is still Eyewitness News on 97.3 City FM.